Naushad, you give us a very good insight into the fact that things are beginning to look up and things are moving on the ground. At the level of states, which is where the real action is, the central government has devolved a lot of funds to them, given them freedom to utilize funds, and so they have a better ability to engage with private sector. Where do you see the reforms and changes at the regional level? What are the best changes that are happening?
So, I think one of the most positive developments of the last 2 years has been a true unleashing of competitive federalism. As states have started to compete one with the other.
Is it more than a slogan?
I think it's very much more than a slogan. Let me give you two examples. First, take the area of labor reform. Labor reform is a very contentious issue. It was first raised by Manmohan Singh when he was finance minister. There was a lot of criticism. The issue ended up being dropped, and it vanished from the policy agenda for over 20 years. Right?
And we are in the 25-year of economic reforms.
Absolutely, right? It was finally picked up again by this government, and I think it was courageous that the government picked it up. They realized too that doing anything substantial on the labor reform side at the central government level was going to be very difficult. So they said quite cleverly, I think, that look, this is a concurrent issue. It's an issue where the states can move ahead if they wish, right? And they, as the central government, would approve the changes that they wanted. They encouraged states to move ahead on their own labor reforms, and we've seen 5 states move and change their labor laws. So Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, which you would never have thought would be in a labor reform short list of states, have all moved on their labor reforms.
So when you see these changes are very welcome, because I think one of the best thing is, instead of the center deciding everything for everybody, yes, the states are taking ownership of these changes, which is also politically more tenable. When do you see this impact affecting projects on the ground?
So we as a company track projects around the country, and one of the things that struck us is that in the last year or so, the overwhelming proportion of moving projects that are in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. And it's a question, how come Telangana and Andhra Pradesh? I mean, they always had good project activity, but why this disproportionate representation? And it's because of a particularly fierce competition that's taking place between the new state of Andhra Pradesh and the new state of Telangana, right, to attract investment and to move forward in a whole range of sectors. I'll give you a great example of competitive federalism there. The state of Andhra Pradesh announced a very proactive policy where they said, look, if you're waiting for an approval and you don't get it in 21 days, then you can consider the approval to have been granted. It's deemed to be approved. The state of Telangana went one better and they said, look, 21 days, it's deemed to be granted, and the bureaucrat who was sitting on that approval will be fined. So, I mean, to me, it's a good example of competitive federalism.
And I think also accountability.
And accountability. I mean, states are starting to push the decision making down and say, how do we actually deliver change on the ground? And I think that's very powerful.
There has been a lot of debate about the impact of National Skills Development Corporation. There's a skills ministry in the government today. What are the learnings from the efforts so far which can help us really make sure that A, the skill creation is of a certain quality, and B, to ensure that is taken into the industry, because there seems to be a gap there?
I agree. I think we're poised to see a lot of change there at two levels, and both areas are both deliverables for us as a part of our theme this year. First, in terms of the skills framework, and the National Skills Development Corporation has worked on, I think it's about 350 different skills, where they have identified different levels within those skills and said, look, how do you become a better, and this is a range of skills. This is how do you become a better cook, how do you become a better waiter, how do you become a better person who cleans your house, and also how do you become a better machinist on the shop floor. So it's a huge range of skills, and that framework is now all done. It needs to be effectively deployed and taken up on a widespread basis by corporate India. And I think that's where we need to play
I think
a
the
much more
ownership
proactive role. It has to move. It has to move.
I think
now
the
to
ownership
industry.
of corporate India on these efforts needs to sort of
Absolutely.
rise to a better level.
I think we can take much greater advantage of it. You know, the government passed a new apprenticeship act a year and a half ago. It's quite a fundamentally new act. It provides great flexibility in hiring apprentices. It moves away from having all these specified percentages, you know, that if you have 100 turners, then you must have 5 turners as apprentices. You can now mix and match in terms of your apprentices as you like, covering all fields, including services. It provides great flexibility. Those notifications from the state governments are still flowing out. Even a year and a half later, it's something that needs to be hastened so that this can become reality on the ground. But from companies as well, we should be displaying, it seems to me, a lot more eagerness to take advantage of the flexibility that this new act provides, because it's a great advantage. You know, it'll help us in our own firms in training people that will be good for our companies and good for everyone else.
That's fuel and engine for your growth.